Hello everybody, this is Lee Bamber from the Game Creators, and today I'm going to ramble on for a couple of tens of minutes on the internal development of GameGuru Max. This is a live broadcast. This is live broadcast number 23 in fact. If you want to see all previous live broadcasts from 1 to 22, just go to our YouTube channel and you can find them all there. This is going to be a bit of a rambler. I have a few tiny little things to show you, but nothing of any meat. So it'll be largely me talking and going blah, 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 blah. And then hopefully something a bit more constructive in answering your questions. If you are lucky enough to attend live, you can ask your questions in the chat. I will answer a couple of them at the end, and the rest I will answer in a GameGuru forum thread, along with this recording of this live broadcast after this live broadcast has completed. So that concludes the intro. And I'll jump straight into the software and witter on a little bit more about what I'd like to talk about. But before that, I just want to see if everybody can hear me. Matty Oliver says, yes, audio is fine. Great, wonderful. Everyone hears me, so I'm not talking to an empty room. What I would like to talk about first is the way we're going to deliver certainly the development builds, but then eventually the final software at the end. Traditionally, you would have expected a couple of gigabytes worth of installer. You install that, and then, of course, you proceed to somehow get updates. Well, we've improved that whole regime a little bit. We're using something now called a tiny installer, which is effectively an installer that's only 120 megabytes in size, basically a stub. And the idea is you just run that executable. So it's not a zip that you have to unzip. It's just an executable. You run it. It does a very tiny installations for things like registry and putting an icon on your desktop. Then it immediately launches an updater. And what the updater's job is to do is grab all the rest of the files from our server and install it on your local machine file by file. So the effective result of that is you don't end up having an old installer. It will only grab the latest version of your product. And it doubles as an auto updater. So for the first time you use it, it will basically go and get all your files for you, put them in the right places. And then every time after that, as soon as we release an update, it will be able to use exactly the same system to retrieve the newer files and update your system automatically. And the system is also very clever in that you can go back to previous versions as well. You can go back to any version you want. So we're pretty happy with that idea. It means you can get the installer super quick. When you go through the installer, you get all the latest versions, and everything after that, it's a super quick experience in getting the latest version of GameGuru Max. So we hope you're going to like the look of that. We're not showing it yet because we've not completed it. One of the things we're going to start doing as we continue these live broadcasts into 2021 is to only show you things that we consider to be demonstration worthy. I personally would have liked to have showed you stuff that was like half complete, wires hanging out and broken, because I have this geeky perspective that I think everyone secretly wants to be an engineer. Of course, that's not the case at all. Some people only really get the idea of what something is when it's actually finished and polished. We won't actually go to those extremes, but we'll certainly go to the extreme of making sure that what you see is functional and it doesn't do horrible things in the process of executing that functionality. And then before we release it to the public, we make sure that it's relatively bug free. So that's sort of the goals we want to do. When we release something, even if it's just a beta, we want to make sure that it's pretty solid. So that's our goal. And because live previews preempt those releasing of those builds, I have to be very careful about what I show you, so you don't then say, oh, that's really good, and then you come to get the build and it's not even there. So based on that, I want to talk about, tantalizingly talk about some of these icons you may have noticed in the top corner. In the past, I have talked about this lovely little thing, Game Project. I'll be able to reveal more about that in the live broadcast to come. You're already familiar with some of these, such as sculpt, painting, and adding vegetation. But what is this? RPG genre, puzzle genre, shooter genre? What are these buttons? Now I'd like to click them. But as I said, it's just the UI we've done. There is no back-end functionality, and I can't show you what it does in the game. So I'm not going to show you that until that piece is concluded in the build, and then I can do a full demonstration of it. But let me give you a brief idea of what they are. I'll just start with shooter, because that's the one that's closest to our hearts, in the sense that we've been doing it for years and years, and we know quite a lot about shooter genres and what you need to make a game in that shooter genre game type style. What we wanted to do was to give people the option of creating advanced logic without the need to script. That was basically it. Nor did we want to go down the route of something, say, like blueprints, which just becomes a hideous mess of logic after a couple of logic paths, and now you're staring at these wibbly wobbly lines and lots of boxes and identical looking sliders. So what we've decided to do is bring the logic closer to the game. So the logic that we're going to let you create is actually in the world itself. So you'll be able to see the relationships between characters and objects, buildings, switches, things like that, visually. You'll literally be able to see a line connecting them together, and then the ability to edit those lines and to edit the properties of those relationships. And so at a glance, you'd actually be able to see all the logic right in front of you. So effectively, let's say you had a switch. You pulled the switch and you want a door to open. In the past, you'd have to go to Entity Properties, type out an if used field and hope you got the name right. With GameGuru Max, all you do is just go into one of these genre modes and then just drag a line from the switch to the door. And then it's clearly obvious what that relationship is. When you switch the switch, then the door opens. But then you'll have some additional action options. When you've pulled the switch, other things could happen with that object that you're connected to. And you can connect to multiple objects, and objects can connect to each other. And so you can imagine the opportunities you'll have creating that kind of logic, never having to touch a piece of script. And we've decided to split it into three: RPG, puzzle and shooter, because they have very distinct identities. When you think of an RPG, you're thinking of storytelling and characters and great quests and adventures. When you think of puzzle, you're thinking of cerebral stuff, you know, like, oh, I've got to move this block here so I can stand on it and reach the ladder and climb up to the next level, or I've got to arrange these numbers in a certain order, etc. Lots of those sorts of things. You'll see them a lot in the VR space. And of course, shooter. The fallback position, the Call of Duties, the Fortress, the games which is largely about having a gun, collecting ammo and shooting other people. And of course there's a lot of logic that you might want to craft in that space. And of course they're all available. You know, we're not saying you can only create a shooter game, I can only create an RPG. You can mix the elements of any of these styles into the game that you make, or you might just decide to stick with one. And of course that really helps if you just want to focus on one thing. You only really have the controls that you need in front of you, and the screen's not cluttered with all of the other things that you might not need. Like, you know, in your RPG story game, you never need ammo or guns, so I see that cluttering up your user interface. So that's basically the logic behind that. The rest of the toolbar, I can reveal some extra changes that you won't see here. We're keeping the tools, the object tools, that used to be the entity editing. We're going to do some crazy cool things with that, so watch the space for that. We are removing the waypoint editing mode because that will be serviced within these three, so I'm really excited to show you something like that when we've got that functionality in place, i.e. characters moving from one place to another. And yeah, I'm like itching to actually tell you the plans, but I want to show you. I just don't want to tell you. So wait for that one. That'll be really good when it's built into there. The character creator, the structure editor, the importer will all disappear from this toolbar and then migrate somewhere else within the software. Specifically, the character creator and the importer will now be found inside what will be the new object library. And again, I'm looking forward to showing you the new object library layout, which is much cooler. You can find things quicker. You can preview objects a bit more. You can rotate and explore them and check the properties even before you add them to your world. So you really get to analyze the content before it actually enters your level. And of course, at this point, it makes logical sense that if you can't find a character that you want, you can create one. If you can't find an object that one, you can import it. So it was better to place those functions there. Obviously, we're still keeping the test level, which will be called test level, and obviously test level in virtual reality. But we're going to have a third button, which I think is quite exciting, called test level in developer mode. And effectively what that does, it gives you invulnerability. So no more need to drop down a start marker and give yourself 9,999 healths. You simply just run it in indestructible mode, and then you can just run through your level perfectly protected. But the standard test level will then let you play it with all of the balances that you've put and designed into your level. So that's just some of the things that I wanted to sort of hint at before I could show you the full functionality inside the game. There's one more thing that it came up quite recently in one of our design discussions. We've been doing a lot of design meetings just to make sure that we really nail this design before we go full hog on the coding side. And that's something called live editing, and it's something I've been really excited about for quite some time. And I'm finally getting it to be able to do it, and it's super, super easy. I'll just give you a hint. And then, of course, I'll leave it up to your imagination. Right now, of course, I was standing on it. Right now, you do tab, and you tab, and then you got all these settings. Now, don't you agree that this is really just a subset of all the things that you want to edit? We used to have something called F9, which was sort of a second layer of editing, which had different controls and different shortcuts and different ways of doing things. It's like crazy. You got 2 different editors in one piece of software. So the live editing idea is you could be running along, la 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 la, and then you think, oh, wouldn't it be good if I have a milk curtain on top of there? How's the best way to do it? Well, of course, you're going to press tab, you're going to go back to the editor, you're going to find a milk curtain and add it to this crate, and then you're going to resume your game. So then you can carry on playing the game, or editing terrain, or painting terrain, or changing the sky. So it's not just a case of, oh, I've got nice little shortcuts to some of the things I can do. You literally have access to everything you can do right in the middle of your test level session. So that's the concept of live editing, and I'm looking forward to reveal working functional demonstrations in the broadcasts to come. So I hope that's a little bit exciting for you to learn about, and hopefully exciting for me to demonstrate it as soon as I've got something to demonstrate. So I'm going to turn my attention now over to the chat session to see if there's any questions. I forgot to mention that I respond to questions that have a question mark simply because I need to scan through chat, and sometimes it's pretty difficult to read everything, because otherwise you just end up with little gaps of silence. But it doesn't look too bad, actually. I think we'll probably get away with answering all the questions, even the ones that don't have a question mark. Right at the beginning, we've got an exclamation. Please do not scrap the structure editor. We are not scrapping the structure editor. We are discussing scrapping the structure editor. If you want to discuss it, then there is a forum thread on the GameGuru forums. Please let your opinions unleash themselves there, and on balance, we'll figure out what the community wants. That's the place to talk about the structure editor. There are pros and there are cons, and you'll find them all in that thread. So please go there, and we'll have a lively debate in that context. Just finding the first question. Just going through all the everyone can hear me. Here we go. Here's one from Easy Game Development Tools, a regular visitor to the live broadcast, and seemingly always the first one to get the question in. I do wonder whether he actually cuts and pastes it straight in as soon as the broadcast starts. So this is the question. Is the current beta capable of producing a complete exported game yet? Question mark. The answer is no. As you can see, we've stepped back in order to review the UI and the UI design. So basically any code that was in progress or close to completion was stopped, so we could then go back and make sure that the editor and all of the flow of the experience was right. So you can imagine that the exporting of a finished game is rather at the end, when nearly everything has been finished and all the functionality is in place. So that's a big resounding with exclamation no. Here's a question from Jay Birdman. Hi Lee, I'm still having that 8003 close brackets runtime error. Being a runtime error, do you still think it's a permission issue? Sure. If you try to write a file at a certain point or read a file at a certain point and there's some permission issues, then yes, it will try and block you. Could also be a dodgy installation, so you've got files missing. My advice actually is to wait for this next one, because we have a verify mode which will literally check to see if you've got files that are missing, and instantly puts them back for you. We're also we're still in the design phase, but I'm really excited about it. It's the ability for you to report a bug direct from the software. The idea that you can just, I've got this. Well, boom, you can actually report that bug, and then we get it automatically added to our bug list, and then we can go through them and set them and find out what more information we need, etc. Of course, that might not necessarily work if it's a hard crash. but we will be providing more useful information rather than an empty pair of brackets after the before the runtime error syntax. So expect improved messaging for when it does do a hard crash, but if it's a soft crash or issue, then there will be a facility for you to report that directly to Issues Board without having to visit a website. Here's another question from Martin Oliver. Will we be able to change folders for custom assets? Some people use smaller SSD drives. Asset libraries can get pretty large. Able to change folders for custom assets? Sure, you could just create a folder in the entity bank and there you go, you've got your own folder. I presume that's not what you mean. You could put folders inside the user's folder. You could do that as well. So in the sense that that's how you can create custom folders for custom assets, then that's how you would do it. Please clarify that question if that answer wasn't really close on the nub. I'm pretty sure it wasn't, because Martin Oliver is a pretty prolific artist, long-time community member, and knows all about creating folders and putting assets in them. So, a bit more clarity would be great. Here's a question. Will you be adding further genres? No. No. We're a small team. We're going to focus on RPG, puzzle, cerebral, and shooter. And that's a massive scope. You know, it takes development teams years and tens of millions of dollars to do one of those genres, and we're doing 3 with a tiny team. So I think that's plenty big enough to bite off for version 1. And we'll do justice to those 3 genres so you can create a good scope and choice and variety of games within that genre. We're not just going to say, this is the template RPG game, and all you can do is change some values. You will be able to create a good variety of games within each of those game types. Here's a question. This is from Duke229. What are the chances that we ever get a bullet physics overhaul? Like bullet being actual properties instead of rays castings. Yeah, I know what you mean. The bullet that we used is probably the same bullet engine we had about 5 years ago, and I'm sure the bullet API has improved since. It's just a question of what is the priority of that. The physics that we're using now is more functional and necessary, like it keeps players and enemies on the ground, it stops people walking through things, it deals with objects that fall down hills and drops off ledges, just all the basic stuff. But of course there's other things we'd like to do, like convex hulls and accelerated reduced geometry for faster physics processing. And of course, cool things that you already can find in classics, such as joints and springs and other things like that. But again, it's a question of how far do we go before it's a full-on physics simulator and kind of drifts away from what games actually need. So I think if it's a thing that a game actually needs in the 3 game types we've talked about, it's likely to get an overhaul for that reason. But we're not going to reproduce Bullet in its entirety in GameGuru Max. That's not really one of our goals. Getting a few more questions, which is great. Here's another one. Sorry, I just moved my little... Here we go. This is from Rohit Maman. Can I create minimum 4 players online multiplayer games? Well, we're focusing on single player right now. There's plenty of work to do in single player before we even contemplate multiplayer. There are no plans to add anything else or new to the multiplayer side of things. So whatever you see in GameGuru Classic multiplayer through the Steam API, that's pretty much how it will remain. The only difference would be the Photon. We won't be dependent on the Steam API. We're using the Photon engine, which then allows us to run outside of the Steam environment, so you can have standalone multiplayer games. But we're just thinking about single player at the moment. So multiplayer really is at the back of our minds. Here's a question from Hyles. Can I run GameGuru Max on my 64-bit UHD 620 8GB i5 CPU 1.7 GHz Surface Book 2? No. It's below minimum spec. We're aiming for a GTX 960 at the moment. That might go up, it may go down, but that's generally the indicator. You would need a desktop with a decent dedicated GPU in order to run all the wonderful eye candy we have planned for you. Might seem brutish, but there are no plans to do that sort of low-end minimum spec sort of low-end systems support. For that, look for GameGuru Classic, which does have a lower threshold for older systems and for less powered systems. So going through to the next question. Alfred asks, but when will it be ready? We've changed the release to an open release, so there isn't any deadline on the release. Instead, our deadline is when the product is good enough, when it achieves that level of quality that we believe can go beyond this community and start appealing to a larger group of people, because of course that means more sales, that means more revenue, that means more money to spend on maintaining and adding to this product, and I think it's a good strategy. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to get the product quality to a very high level and then say, yes, now this is ready to release, rather than just picking a date out of the air and then aiming for it, because then you'll have to compromise before you actually get to that level of quality that you won't really know about until you're at the latter phases where you start playing with it and getting a feel for the product and to know whether it's a quality product or not. So I'm down to the last couple of questions. I'm just checking the clock. We're okay. We're okay, but only a few more minutes for this. Let's see if we can find one question. Will we be able to download our old GameGuru assets directly from the store? Sure. If you use GameGuru Classic, you can download them from the store. If you use GameGuru Max, there'll be a button in Max that you can then go to the store and download your assets from there. So don't worry about that. Now, there is an issue. These are GameGuru Classic assets you're dragging into Max. They may not be 100% compatible, and the scripts may not be 100% compatible, etc., etc. So I will probably be talking to the owner administrator of the asset store to maybe put a Max tag on assets, so artists can put the Max tag on to say this asset is good for Max. So you'll know that if you're getting new assets, that this will be okay on GameGuru Max. But watch the space for that. But yeah, really, really old stuff that isn't compatible still won't be compatible if you download it through the store and have it running on Max. Here's a question from Casey. Will we be able to use Max with Reallusion software? Yeah, Reallusion's good company, some great products. I particularly like the Character Creator 3. Really excited about whether we can get some of those characters into GameGuru Max. But there are no firm plans at this time. We are more looking at, say, the Sketchfab asset store and the characters that they purvey, because it comes in the GLTF format, and the ones that you then filter out will have animations and rigs, and we can work with that. The Character Creator 3, it's further away. I've not looked at the technology recently. It is an exciting prospect though, because you can do a lot with it, but there is a fee to Character Creator 3. I think it's about $200, which will be 4 times the price of GameGuru Max. So it's one of those weird things where the companion product is 4 times the price of the main product. So I don't know whether that's going to be a very popular thing. But I'm personally very excited about what they're doing. Some great characters coming out of them. And it'd be great if we could provide support at some point in the future. Here's another question. This is from C. Dewehi. Can we walk around... Sorry, that name was definitely not pronounced right. Can we walk around the VR level with Quest 2 using the Guardian system? You can use the Quest 2 with Link. So you would run it as if it was running a desktop app. Then you use the Oculus Quest 2 Link, and then it would run your headset as if it was a desktop headset. You could do that with GameGuru Max. There's no such thing as running it standalone on the Quest 2, because that runs on Android, and we're not porting GameGuru Max to Android, not at this time, and probably not ever, given the level of graphics that we want to push through. So that's just something as a heads up. Looking for the next and probably last question. Here we go. This is the last question. Crazy. Bouncy Sky 152. Will we be able to change the player's character model? GameGuru Max will be a first-person perspective game maker only. You will never be able to see your player. You will have no arms or legs, etc. You'll have your arms, sorry, I apologise. You'll have arms because you see your arms and your gun and stuff. But there isn't such a say change the body or the head or the legs, because it's not third person, you don't see it. And if you do an RPG, where you say doing a warrior or a goblin or a wizard and choose your character, that's just done in a separate space. That's done when you're editing your screens, your 2D screens, so you can go and change your player stats and stuff like that. That's just imported images. You can do that no problem. So that's all the questions that I got. I know there's some extra questions coming in, but those will have to be answered in the GameGuru thread after I've made this recording and put it on our YouTube channel. I'd like to show you some more next time. I'm just checking my dates. I think there's one more. I think there's one more live broadcast next week, and then that's it. I'm done for Christmas, and then I'll be back bright and fresh and recharged at the start of January to continue our live broadcasts. So tune in one last time next week for the last broadcast of 2020. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you think we're on track and on target for what we're talking about. And if you want to see a change of recipe in the live broadcasts for 2021, please do make that known to us, because we're all about feedback and input and improving what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you next Wednesday, 4 p.m. GMT. Until then, goodbye.